Conversations, episode 17. Have you missed us? It has been a while, a couple of weeks after having a couple of episodes within a 4-day period. So hopefully you missed us a little bit and didn't forget about us. And if you are back, welcome back. Glad to have you. Hopefully it was a great holidays and you've had a great start to the new year. And if you are new to the podcast, hopefully you will be with us throughout the entirety of 2026 and beyond. We've got a really exciting sports year coming up, and I'm not just saying that as a cliche. I do think that it is a banner year as far as sports are concerned. We've got the Winter Olympics coming up in about a month, and then we've got the World Cup in the U.S., of course, which is near and dear to my heart and something that we'll definitely be covering as we get closer to that. But we've got a big show today, so I don't want to waste too much time here. However, if you are still on the train of not following us or have not subscribed to us on your listening platform of choice, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and send us a follow on all the socials. We are on Facebook, X at KBEX_ATC, Instagram at cornversationspod. And if you'd like to interact with the podcast in any way, send us a mail question or just let us know how we're doing at cornversationspod@gmail.com. Just a little rundown of what we're going to cover today. We've got a little bit of bowl season recap. I'm not going to spend too much time there. We want to look forward instead of behind, but we are going to take a look at some things that we've learned from the bowl season as we are down to just 3 games left in the college football campaign. We'll then switch over to NFL playoffs and talk about the wild card weekend that is coming up here in just a few days. And then we will switch gears and hit up a mailbag question that's been sitting in the hopper for a couple of weeks and talk a little bit of college hoops. And I think it makes sense to do that now as we turn the calendar to the new year, and we are just a few months away from March Madness. So we'll definitely start talking some hoops more on the pod in coming episodes as well. But before we get started on anything, I am excited, and this is probably the best part about this episode, is that we are back with a guest on Conversation. So you may remember him from an earlier episode, and it actually makes sense that he's coming back for playoff weekend here in the NFL because he was with us for the NFL trade deadline episode. And that, of course, if you haven't figured it out by now, is our friend, the Thumbnail. Thumbnail, how's it going? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, K-Bex. Yep, Thumbnail here. Don't mind the echo if you can hear that in the audio. We're working with a space on budget right now, but had a lot of fun the first time I was on the podcast discussing NFL trade deadline. And for anyone that kept score on our predictions, I don't think we did very well, which is probably usually the case when we make predictions on this show, but the fun part is, there's always something new to talk about. So happy to be back and look forward to watching the playoffs and, giving some more predictions here. So thanks for having me back, K-Bex.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, don't worry about the quality. We haven't gotten that big fat paycheck yet from any of our sponsors. So we're still balling on a budget and it's no problem. As long as we've got good content, I think that people will enjoy it. But yeah, no, that's the good thing about a podcast. Nobody's going back to take a look at your predictions and let you know where you went wrong. Shout out to Around the Corn Sports blog and me calling Cam Newton a poor man's Terrell Pryor back in 2011. Not that anybody remembers that. Yeah, so let's talk bowl season before we get into the NFL talk. So I guess the question that I'm going to start out with, Thumbnail, how many bowl games, and if you don't know the exact number, just a ballpark, how many bowl games do you think you actually watched over the past 2.5 weeks?
I would say roughly 7 to 10. With the holidays, everyone's busy, and a lot of times the games are on during a work day or the middle of the day when you're out shopping, maybe seeing family or, eating, food with your friends or family. So really, unless if it was the college football playoff, I didn't watch anything too closely. I do always enjoy the Pop Tart Bowl. I know we're only on year 2 of that, but the pageantry of the Pop Tart Bowl is can't miss TV. And I will say, the Hawaii Bowl has gotten some love on the blog before, and that was the only sporting event on for Christmas Eve to keep us sickos, as KBEX would call it, sane on Christmas Eve. So I did watch that one, and that was pretty impressive how Hawaii was able to come back with the game-winning drive, coming down from, I believe it was 21 points, and they won the game with their backup quarterback. So that was a good win for the hometown team.
Yeah, no, you definitely put more analysis into that than I was expecting you to. And honestly, I think 7 to 10 games is probably more than the average college football fan. But yeah, to your point about the sickos, and I would definitely consider myself one of them. Probably saw at least a couple of drives from every single game so far. So I'm definitely in that category of bowl season is not dead. But yeah, I mean, you brought up a good point about the Pop Tarts Bowl, and really what I wanted to do with this segment was just a couple of pillars of maybe what we learned from this bowl season. Um, the first pillar that I had was how do we keep bowl season relevant? And the reason that I even came up with this is because there's been talk over the last few seasons about, you know, is should we just blow the whole thing up, right? Why do we have 47 bowl games right now? Are people even watching any of these things other than the playoff games? And from my perspective, as somebody who, has really loved this time of year as far as the games are concerned, and like I said, I probably watched a little bit of every one of them. I don't want to see it die. And I understand, and there are some valid arguments, right, from critics of it. Why are we playing these games? So the NIL has kind of ruined it. You've got players opting out left and right. You've got guys in the coaching carousel that are leaving their teams before they get to play the game. You've got situations where, guys are just opting out because they don't want to get hurt before they go to the draft. You've got situations like you mentioned where these games are being played at 11 o'clock on a Friday morning when most of the people that could watch this game are still at work. But you brought up the Pop Tarts Bowl, and I think this is the first example I wanted to use because one of the solutions to how you keep bowl season relevant, in my opinion, is you've got to keep it fun. You've got to keep it light, memify it if I can create a word. And the Pop Tarts Bowl is a good example of one of the games that has done a really good job about this. They're not taking themselves super seriously. The part of the game I think that both college football fans and maybe the casuals appreciate the most is the halftime show and the post-game celebration. And the Pop Tarts Bowl, of course, was the first one really to take the leap of faith and try to do that. But this year, you saw a few other bowls dive into that as well and try their hand at kind of memifying the game, if you will. And one of the ones that I want to point out, in addition to the Pop Tarts Bowl, is the Xbox Bowl. I'm not sure if that's one of the ones that you watched. It was it was one of those midweek games. It wasn't at night after regular working hours on the East Coast, but it was not exactly a matchup that most people were looking forward to. I mean, you had an Arkansas State team taking on gosh, at this point, I can't even remember who it was. But the Xbox Bowl, what they did at the end of it, if you didn't catch it, was they had Master Chief from the Halo series come out on one of his vehicles from the game and deliver the winning trophy and the MVP awards to the two most valuable players. And it caught a lot of attention on social media. It seemed like the players really loved it. And this was by no means one of the marquee bowl games of the season. You're looking at a pre-December 25th game played in Frisco, Texas, not at Jerry's World, but at Jerry's practice facility. Quite literally, the Dallas Cowboys practice facility is where this game was being held. And yet it was one of the games, at least for me, that actually had some sort of lasting effect in my mind of, okay, this is bowl season. This is what it is now. And I think that if you're a sponsor for one of these games, you've got to lean into that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, just a quick Google search. It was Missouri State versus Arkansas State.
Missouri State. Yep. So
Missouri
not even
State,
a team that
yes.
was, Yeah, they weren't even in FCS, or I'm sorry, in FBS 2 seasons ago. So this is a team that a lot of people really have no idea about. Probably have not watched them throughout the regular
Hmm.
season, and they're taking on a Sun Belt team in Arkansas State. But yeah, I mean, they were able to get people talking about it on X and other social media platforms, and I'm sure that they're going to be back next year doing something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head, keeping the bowl games light for the fans. I do think, with keeping it light, that's easy maybe for some of the smaller conferences, maybe a G5 team or a MAC team that's just happy to be there. I don't know if you saw Archie Manning won the MVP of the bowl game with Texas versus Michigan, and they asked him, what does it mean to you, Archie, to win MVP or Player of the Game, whatever it was for this bowl game? And I believe, he said, no offense to whatever bowl this is. I think it might have been the Cheez It Bowl,
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, the Citrus Cheez It Bowl. He said, no offense to the Citrus Cheez It Bowl, but I'm not trying to be back here next year. We have bigger, goals and aspirations. And to me, you do want to memify it, but for the bigger programs, I don't think that they're going to buy into that, especially with some players that are making millions of dollars in NIL. But if you do want to keep bowl season alive, you're going to have to get the fan engagement from maybe some of these mid tier programs that are okay with being in the Cheez It Bowl or the Xbox Bowl or whatever it may be. So I know for me, I went to the University of Akron. So if Akron ever made it to the Pop Tart Bowl, I would be ecstatic and I would watch every second of that game. But, I'm also an Ohio State fan. And if they were in that game, a lot of us would be disappointed. So, really, I think it kind of comes down to who is in the bowl game and, selling to your audience. So, that's a little bit of my 2 cents there.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good take because you're right. There are certain programs that are never going to be happy with anything outside of college football playoff bids, and rightly so. And Texas is one of those teams, and Ohio State is one of those teams. The Pop Tarts Bowl, I think, it should be mentioned that that was essentially a CFP consolation bowl. You had BYU taking on Georgia Tech, and the only reason it wasn't BYU against Notre Dame is because Notre Dame opted out of the bowl season entirely. So the Pop Tarts Bowl was very much so being positioned as a hey, these are two teams that were right on the outside looking in to the area that really everybody wants to be. But in terms of the play on the field, I think we're in alignment there that you're not going to always be able to sell the viewer on the game that is being played, but rather what's going on around the game, how it's being marketed. And, I'll liken it to something that I have a little bit of experience with because in a past life, I worked for a minor league baseball team. And one thing that I'll always say about minor league baseball and the people that work in there, specifically the people in marketing, is that they have to be some of the most creative people in sports because you are not getting people for the most part to go to minor league baseball to watch the baseball on the field. You're going there because of what's going on during the game, because of the atmosphere, because of the things that they do in between the innings, as much as you were doing it for going to see whatever pitcher is on the mound that day. And I think that there's some parallels that you can make between minor league baseball and stuff like the Pop Tarts Bowl, for example. And yeah, I mean, you don't want to totally,
Hmm.
you know, take all meaning out of what's going on in the field because this is still a sport that's violent and you have to have the players to buy in to some extent too. But I think that there is an ability to kind of uh, toe that line or, have a little bit of a balance there between, making it
Hmm.
something that's a fun watch, not just because of what's on the field.
Hmm. Absolutely. And another thought that I had that could probably be a whole nother podcast episode itself, so we won't get into it too much, but something I've never really seen before was the Notre Dame athletic director just come out and kind of make an enemy out of everybody. saying, the ACC let them down. They turned down the invite to I think it was the Pop Tart Bowl,
Hmm.
and a few other things. So if you're going to get the fan engagement, like you said, you're going to need the players, the school administrators, the executives, and basically everyone needs to buy in. It's going to be hard to get fans to buy in if certain programs think that they're above, non-playoff bowl games, which I guess Texas was that way in a way when Archie Manning made those comments. But I really thought that was quite a spectacle to see Notre Dame's athletic director make those comments. But we could definitely go down a rabbit hole with that conversation or topic as well.
Yeah, we did in a previous episode, so I'm not going to go too much into the Bavakwa situation. But Notre Dame isn't owed anything by the ACC because they aren't sharing their revenue from their television deal with the other ACC schools. So unless they want to, change what they're doing with regards to that situation, I think that they're going to be in the same boat that they were in this year, with the exception of the fact that now they've got that opportunity to have essentially an automatic bid as long as they finish within the top 12. But yeah, I digress. We'll move on from that point because we have spent some time on that one. Then the only other pillar that I have here, and this one will be interesting, I think, for you as a former Midwestern dweller, is what I would call the truth about SEC dominance. And we talk about this, I think, most bowl seasons because it just comes up. And there's also something called the Bowl Challenge Cup that does track the records of each conference that gets teams into bowl season. But the SEC this year had a particularly bad showing in bowl season overall. They were 4-9 in bowl games that have been played so far, and 3 of those wins have been either against Tulane or against other SEC teams. And all 3 of those wins that I'm referencing right now came in the college football playoffs. So you're talking about Alabama's win over Oklahoma and then Mississippi's win over Georgia just last week. Only one other SEC team has actually won a game this postseason, and that was Texas in the Cheez It Bowl. You would then might ask yourself, well, okay, maybe it's just a down year for the SEC. Maybe, but when we compare them to the Big Ten, which is often the comparison that gets made when we talk about postseason results, the last time the SEC had a record that was better than the Big Ten during bowl season was the 2022-2023 season. So we've had 3 seasons now that the Big Ten has essentially bested the SEC in regards to bowl season records. And then lastly, going back to that Bowl Challenge Cup, when was the last time the SEC had the best record from a percentage standpoint in bowl season? The 2019-2020 season. So it's been over half a decade at this point since the SEC could realistically call themselves the kings of college football if you're looking at it from a bowl season perspective. So just want to get your thoughts on that because I know you're, as a Big Ten fan yourself, somebody that has lived in the area, there's that rivalry that we talk about. And right now, it very much seems like the Big Ten has taken control of that when you're talking about head-to-head results. And when we look at this bowl season in particular, you've got Iowa beating Vanderbilt, you've got Illinois beating Tennessee. This wasn't a Big Ten SEC matchup, but the Missouri team that played Virginia lost their bowl game. So you're looking at teams in the SEC that were generally regarded as pretty solid football teams this season that went into their final game of the year and weren't able to get the job done.
Right. Yes. So, I wish I could sit here and tell you why that shift has occurred. I can look at, some things that may be in direct correlation with each other in that shift. And I don't know the exact year NIL and the transfer portal made the big switch, or I guess NIL is fairly new in the last 2 or 3 years. But just looking at it from a high level point of view, I would guess that NIL is giving Big Ten an advantage. Being able to pay players, a market value, the portal being open. You don't have to sit out those years. Maybe these Big Ten schools may have the money or resources available that are attractive to these young athletes. I do know Shane Gillis kind of joked toward Nick Saban. I think it was last football season, saying that the SEC is no longer dominant because you can now openly pay players, and he kind of was poking fun that the SEC was paying players under the table. So I'm not saying that's true or anything, but it is interesting to see kind of the correlation between NIL and the Big Ten success. I mean, you've seen Michigan win it 2 years ago, Ohio State last year, and now Indiana is clearly the favorite, but Oregon is there as well. So I'd be pretty shocked if a non-Big Ten team won this year. Miami certainly has a chance, but I don't think Ole Miss has really a fighter's chance past this next game. So that's my takeaway from it. We did grow up with the SEC kind of dominating with the Nick Saban era, in LSU and Florida as well when we were, in high school or middle school. So it is nice to see Big Ten kind of take control and dominate for a little bit.
Yeah, and another counterpoint that I will throw out there for people who say, well, Bowl Challenge Cup, that's not a proper way to evaluate this situation because you've got teams from smaller conferences playing each other in these bowl season matchups, and so the G5 conferences have an advantage. That's actually not true because the Bowl Challenge Cup has been around now for 24 seasons, and the split between Power Four conferences winning that cup and the G5 conferences winning that cup is actually almost 50-50. And this year, it's likely to send it right back to 50-50. Each of those groupings have won 12 times each, assuming that a Power Four conference wins it this year. So there is a little bit that you can take from that. And I think that you're right. The NIL situation has had something to do with that, whether it be just simply because of opt outs in the transfer portal. But I think you also have to look at, okay, there are other teams with money in other conferences now that have the ability to, put enough behind these rosters so that when you get to bowl season, if you're severely lacking from your starting lineups, compared to the regular season, there's things behind it. And I think that's to some extent what you were seeing in some of these games is that the Big Ten and the ACC and the Big 12 and some of these other conferences, they have things behind what they maybe have lost already to the transfer portal. And the SEC, while it's the same situation, they don't necessarily have a head and shoulders advantage the way that they used to. So interesting point there. But yeah, it's been a good bowl season. I've been happy with it. I didn't do particularly well from a prediction standpoint, but that's all right. It's not always a winning year. But let's go ahead and let's shift to the big topic of the pod today, which is the NFL playoffs. We've got Wild Card Weekend coming up. We've got a Saturday, Sunday, Monday slate. So it's a full 3 days, or I guess full 2 days, and then you've got that Monday night game to keep us busy. What we're going to do, Thumbnail, is I'd like to just run through each of the 6 wild card games that are going to be played over the next several days here. And we're going to go ahead and give our predictions, and we're going to rank those predictions based on how confident we are that it's going to happen. And then what we're going to do from there, of course, to give the listeners something to chew on is I want to hear what your Super Bowl prediction is at the end of this. So without any further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. We've got the Saturday afternoon game. It's a 5 versus 4 in the NFC. You've got the Rams, the 5 seed, somehow traveling to Carolina to go play the NFC South champions, Carolina Panthers. And this one's an interesting one because the Panthers have beaten the Rams already once this season. What do you think on this one, Thumbnail?
So, we're assigning points here, as you mentioned, and I guess I'm going to get my upset alert out there early. I am going to pick the Panthers on this one, and I'm going to assign it a point value of 3. So there's 6 games. I'm third least confident on this one, but I guess it'll be 3 points. And some of the key points for this are kind of what you mentioned. The Panthers have already had some, success against the Rams this year. And from a pressure standpoint, I think all the pressure is actually on the Rams going into this game. They're a 10-point favorite. Vegas is giving them that advantage. They're on the road, and everyone's expecting them to win. So, the Rams have had a great season. Matthew Stafford has had an MVP level season. However, they haven't really been playing their best brand of football the last couple weeks. They lost a pivotal game to the Falcons a couple weeks ago on Monday Night Football. And they were kind of neck and neck with the Arizona Cardinals last week. So I don't think that they're playing their best right now. They're supposed to be getting Devontae Adams back. But for the Panthers to win this game, I do think they're going to have to force some timely turnovers, which they did in that Week 13 game. Mike Jackson had a pick six on Matt Stafford, and Derek Brown forced a game-winning fumble on Stafford as well to seal the game. So this is going to be my risky pick here. I'm picking the Panthers. They have nothing to lose. They have a tremendous wide receiver who's only a rookie, Tet McMillan, and I'm just feeling something in me is telling me that the NFC South's getting a little too much disrespect. I'm picking them, and I know that you're probably going to disagree on this one.
Yeah, you're starting out hot with this take. I can't agree with you on this one. I really I think it's going to be tough for Carolina to try and beat the Rams twice this year. It's always hard to beat a team twice. It's especially hard when you're the team who is the underdog in both games, and they're a severe underdog coming into this one, being the Panthers. I just look at that offense from the Rams. You're right. They have not been playing their best football right now, but the capability is there. Devontae Adams is supposed to be back. I think they're going to fire on at least most cylinders in this game. And I just wonder where the rest of the offense is going to come from when you consider Carolina, because it does not appear that Dave Canales trusts Bryce Young to grip it and rip it and just open up that offense. And they're going to play a very protected style of football. And I just don't know if that's going to be enough against this Rams team, who, statistically is the best offense in the NFL this season. So, yes, you're looking at a situation, I think, where you're saying, all right, let's roll the dice here. The Rams have not played their best football. Carolina has nothing to lose, and it's true. And they're also playing at home, and the Rams have to come all the way across the country in order to play this game. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go with what I've seen when the Rams are playing well, and trust that offense is going to be able to overwhelm the Panthers. So I actually have this as my number one confidence game. So I've got 6 points on it. So we'll see. You're going to definitely take some points from me if this one does go in favor of the home team, the higher seed, but we will see. So moving on to the second game on Saturday. This one is a real doozy. Green Bay, the 7 seed, is taking on division rival Chicago, the 2 seed. And I'm really looking forward to this one. I see this as probably the most difficult game of the weekend to pick. But Thumbnail, you go ahead. Let me know, what are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head here that this is kind of one of the tougher games. I have Vegas has this as a pick 'em. I'm leaning Packers on this one, and I'm going to assign this point one value, so least confident. And a couple reasons for this. It was really tough for me to pick a side here, but being back in Ohio a few weeks ago, we were watching some football, and the Packers, were playing the Bears in Soldier Field, and it looked like they had a game wrapped up against them, and there was an epic collapse where the Bears were down 10 with 2 minutes left, one timeout, and it kind of just looked like they were playing down to the final minute there, and they were able to get that onside kick and tie the game after the onside kick. So I don't think the Packers are going to let that happen again. They have a little bit more experience with Jordan Love coming back. Matt LaFleur is a good head coach, so I'm going to give the Packers the edge here based on their experience. But if the Bears want to win the game, I think their best recipe for success is getting that run game going early with DeAndre Swift and Kyle um, Mon. I can't say his last name, but when they're rolling on all cylinders, I feel like they have as good a run game as anyone in the NFL, and that kind of takes the pressure off of a young quarterback in Caleb Williams and opening up that passing game. So if they're going to win, I think that they need to lean heavily on that run game. But I'm putting the Packers here. I'll give a score of 31-28.
Okay. All right. High scoring game there. Yeah, no, I mentioned it earlier, and it seems like you agree. I think this one is really a toss up at this point. Um, I will mention I've got in laws who are Packers fans, and I guess you could say I have in laws that are also Bears fans. At least, they're relatives of the direct in laws. And so there's going to be a lot of chatter going on this weekend when this game kicks off. And I'm looking forward to it because I do. I think it's a chess match between two really good teams this year. In my opinion, the NFC North has been, if not the best conference, certainly the second best conference in the National Football League. So both of these teams had good seasons. They deserve to be in this playoffs. The thing I look to when looking at Green Bay is, yeah, they're struggling right now. I think it's 4 straight losses, but Jordan Love is going to be back. They held him out of the final game of the season, despite the fact that he was cleared from his concussion protocol. This is a team that in the early parts of the year, there were some people looking at them and saying, yeah, this is a Super Bowl caliber football team. And while it hasn't persisted throughout the entirety of this regular season, to some extent, the playoffs are all about being healthy and having the right guys be able to help you at the right times. And I think Green Bay, while they come in as the 7th seed and they've got a tough first round matchup against the Bears, I think they are a team that has the capability to go all the way to the title game if they play their cards right. Whereas I look at Chicago, and yeah, it's been a great story. And I think Ben Johnson has worked out almost exactly like they had hoped because Caleb Williams has really had an ascendance this season. The running game, as you mentioned, has been excellent, and they're a tough team to game plan for, a tough team to stop offensively. But they feel like this year's version of the Cardiac Kids to me. And actually, you can point to the last time these two played as evidence of that when Williams needed to throw the ball up to DJ Moore to win that game. And in a playoff scenario, yes, those things can happen. But I think at the end of the day, I'm expecting that there's going to be just a little bit more consistency out of Green Bay, and so I've got this as my number 6 confidence as well. So just 1 point, but I'm also going to go with the Packers. I do think they get it done at Soldier Field. It's going to be rough on Chicago fans because while I see some general negativity from the Green Bay fans, I think because their expectations are quite high. The fans in Chicago, they're all with this team, and it's going to be very tough if they lose because they're going to lose probably in heartbreaking fashion if it happens. All right. So let's move on to the 1 p.m. Sunday slot. This one is also an interesting game. You've got the number 6 Buffalo Bills against the number 3 Jacksonville Jaguars. This one is, I'm curious about your thoughts, Thumbnail.
I think this is actually going to be the game of the weekend. If you were just you didn't have any horse in the race, this would probably be the most exciting game to watch, in my opinion. You have Josh Allen, probably the best player in the league. He might not be in the MVP conversation necessarily, but I would say that most people would consider him probably the best, quarterback in the league, if not the best player in the league. And then you have Trevor Lawrence on the other side, who really isn't getting near enough respect this season. Not many people are talking about him, but he does have 29 passing touchdowns and 9 rushing TDs. So he might not be as dynamic as Josh Allen at times, but he does have more help around him, which I think is going to be the ultimately the factor of what the difference in the game is going to be. I have this as my 2 point confidence here with Jacksonville winning a very close game. Uh, sometimes with the Bills, it kind of feels like they ask Josh Allen to do too much, and it doesn't seem like he has a problem taking on that responsibility. But kind of similar to the Bears, I think they're the best when they get that run game established early with James Cook, and then it kind of opens everything up for Josh Allen and take a little bit of pressure off of him. So if they're going to want, some success there, I think they should establish that run game. But this to me is essentially a coin toss. And one key point here is the kicker for the Jaguars, Cam Little. Man, does he have a leg? I've seen him hit a 70-yarder in preseason. I think it was last week. He hit a 67-yarder, which is the longest field goal in NFL history, which was not in an indoor stadium. So, the longest outdoor kick. And man, is that a luxury in the playoffs if you need some points or just to get some momentum back? So I have this as the game of the week with Jacksonville winning just by a hair.
Okay, well, it sounds like great minds think alike, and I'll get to why that is at the end of my analysis here. But um, you mentioned it about Buffalo. It seems like at times they do rely too heavily, maybe not too heavily, but they rely very heavily on Josh Allen. And that's for good reason. He's the best football player on the planet right now. And so when you have a guy like that, you're going to lean on it, whether you want to or not. But what I look to in this game is you've got strength on strength for both teams. You've got Buffalo's pass defense being the stingiest in the league going up against Trevor Lawrence, who, as you mentioned, has really done a nice job this year. I think he's had, the season that people expected he was going to have regularly in the NFL. And a lot of that can be credited to Grant Udinski, the first year offensive coordinator. They've done an excellent job taking advantage of the true strengths that Trevor has. And they're flying right now. I mean, they're playing good football. And I was not a believer in the Jaguars early in the season. I thought they were a flash in the pan type team and they would eventually fall by the wayside. And I wasn't even predicting that they would make the playoffs, even as we got to the quarter mark of the regular season. But I was wrong about them. I am a believer now, and I do think they have the ability to really hang tough with Buffalo. And on the other side there, you've got a very stingy Jacksonville run defense that's going to be going up against James Cook and Josh Allen. And so you're going to see one or the other pull through, right? I mean, somebody's got to break through. I don't think that defense is going to win the day with these two offenses and with the talent that they have at the quarterback position. But it will be interesting because it's as good as it gets when it comes to run defense and pass defense here. So I'm with you. I've got Jacksonville in a close one. I've also got them as my fifth most confident, so 2 points in this game. So we are right in line with each other, other than that first game on Saturday afternoon. But it only gets more interesting from here. So let's turn the page to the Sunday late afternoon start. We've got San Francisco, the 6 seed, against Philadelphia, the 3 seed. What do you think about this one?
So I have this as I'm going to assign 5 points to this game, and I think that this one's a bit easier to predict. I have the Eagles winning by a couple touchdowns here for a couple reasons. I've never really been a big believer in Brock Purdy in the big spots. And they also have a lot of injuries on defense. That's really hard for me to ignore. With Nick Bosa being out for the year, as well as Fred Warner and others on that defense. I think Kyle Shanahan deserves a lot of credit for the way he's been able to get the 49ers to play this year with a few of these players. It kind of feels like the 49ers defense is playing on fumes, but come playoff time, you kind of need that depth. You need your key pieces out there to win these games. And, the Eagles are the defending Super Bowl champions. So I just think that they're going to expose some of those weaknesses, get the run game going with Saquon. And, to me, if the 49ers want to win this game, I think they need to kind of make it an ugly one. And kind of get the Eagles fans turning against the Eagles. They can get frustrated very quickly and boo their own team, even if they're, winning at halftime. So, they kind of want to ugly it up. And as long as Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patello just kind of stay out of the way, don't do anything too crazy, don't, have any sort of viral reactions to what's going on out there, I think the Eagles should take care of business here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that either one of these teams is going to have problem making it ugly. I'm with you. I think that San Francisco is going to need to have Philadelphia make some mistakes in order to have a chance at winning this game. I'm not a huge Brock Purdy fan either. He does get the job done, though, and there is something to be said for Kyle Shanahan being the quarterback whisperer of the league. I mean, when you look at what happened when Purdy was out earlier this year, Mac Jones became a relevant quarterback, a relevant starting quarterback, and there's nowhere else in the league, unless Kyle Shanahan goes somewhere else, where that would happen. And so there is something to be said for that. I think the cleverness of San Francisco is what has gotten to them, gotten them to this point. But I do think it's going to be hard with all those injuries on the defense for them to be able to stop Philadelphia, because while erratic, there is a clear identity there with Philadelphia. They know exactly what they want to do. They've got a guy in Jalen Hurts who, yeah, he's not an elite guy necessarily either, but he lets the pressure just roll right off of him, and the team feeds off of that and does the same thing. And so while the fans may not like it because it probably will be an ugly game and there's probably not going to be a lot of scoring here, I think that Hurts and the crew gets the job done. So I'm with you. I think they're going to win. I don't have quite as much confidence on it. This is my middle point, so I've got 3 points on it. But, or I'm sorry, I guess it would be, what would that be?
Point
I've
four.
got this listed. Yeah, I've got this listed the other way around. So no, I have this listed as my third most confident. So I have 4 points.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So just a little bit lower than you. But I do think that they're going to get the job done at home, and we're going to see the Eagles at least one more week this season trying to defend their Super Bowl title. The next one up is the Sunday night game, and this one's a big one for you, I know, especially being out where you're at now. The Los Angeles Chargers, the 7 seed, coming into Foxborough and taking on the number 2 New England Patriots, making their debut in the playoffs with Drake May as their talisman. What do you think about this one?
So I have this as my third most confident. So 4 points here. I'm leaning Patriots over Chargers for a few reasons. I think early on the Patriots youth may be on display here. They have a lot of players that don't have a whole lot of playoff experience and are young. So, I kind of expect them to lean on some of their vets early in this game, whether it be, Stephon Diggs on the offense or Milton Williams on the defense. Milton Williams had a great Super Bowl last year with the Eagles, getting after Patrick Mahomes. So I think they're going to rely on a lot of that experience early on to get some of the jitters out of the way for the younger players. Um, a big problem that the Chargers have right now is their attrition on the offensive line. They have Joe Alt out, who is one of the better left tackles in the league as far as Rashawn Slater. So, two of the top tackles on that offensive line are going to be missing. So, they're going to be relying on some backups. I have Austin DeCalas here and Jamari Sawyer will be need to step up to protect Herbert here. And, watching some of the Charger games this year, you can see that Herbert, he obviously has that broken non throwing hand, which is his left hand. So, if he gets that hit, it can kind of bother him. So, I really expect the Patriots to be sending the blitz all day here to try to get after him, take advantage of that, decimated offensive line and, kind of make them beat you that way. But if Herbert is able to move around back there and create time, I think that could be a recipe of success for the Chargers. So, a few pieces of note here as well. Amarian Hampton did not practice on Wednesday with the ankle injury. So, it's possible he's not playing. So, Kamini Vidal, which
Kamani?
I got to give a shout out here.
Kamani Vidal.
Kamani
Yeah.
Vidal. Excuse me. Yes. He was a good pickup for me in fantasy this year on the waiver wire, so I want to give him some love. He's set to be RB1 if Amari and Hampton can't play. And Robert Spillane is also questionable, but he's been ramping up his rehab here with the foot injury. So if the Patriots are gonna, make a deeper run, they're gonna need Robert Spillane back there. But I have the Patriots winning this game again with 4 points for the value.
All right. Well, I know you're going to be, you know, biting your nails if this one is close, and I'll level with you. I think that the Chargers are a good team, and they have the ability to take advantage of some of the maybe what you could call slight weaknesses that the Patriots seem to have exhibited at points this year. However, I do think we need to give Drake May his flowers because this guy has ascended as one of the bright young stars in the league. I think he's going to be around for a while. I think that New England absolutely hit the jackpot with him, getting him, when they did, because this is a guy, he throws a beautiful ball, and he's got guys around him that are seemingly only going to get better. And what I mean by that is, over the course of his career, if New England's front office does things correctly, which it seems like they do, he's only going to get better talent around him. And so, I look at him, and this has become a team that has rallied around him. He is now the leader as a second-year starter, and I think that this is potentially his coming out party. Yeah, you can have a great season during the regular season, but at the end of the day, people are going to judge you on what you do when the lights are the brightest, and the lights are the brightest now. And he's got an opportunity as the 2 seed to have home field advantage all the way up until the AFC title game if they happen to make it there. And I do think that they're going to at least get past this round. I think that there's going to be too much offensively for uh, the Chargers to contend with, especially with some of those injuries that they're going to be dealing with on the offensive end. So I do have New England moving on. I'm pretty confident about this one. It's my second most confident pick, so I've got 5 points on it. I know, Thumbnail, you're going to be watching there closely, and hopefully I did not just jinx them, but I absolutely think that the Patriots, despite being young, are a Super Bowl contender this season.
Oh yeah, and I can say, living right down the road from Gillette Stadium here in Foxborough, people are definitely very excited about it. So I didn't want to toot the horn too much for Drake May. So I kind of wanted to give him a little bit of grace to kind of lean into the playoff experience and not expect him to be the second coming of Tom Brady right away. So I think there is a little bit of that pressure on him already. So hopefully some of the other players can help him out there, and the Patriots can move on to the next round.
Yeah, when I think about May and you say, hey, this is a young guy, which version of him is going to show up? Are you going to see the seemingly grizzled veteran in year 2 who is able to, you know, throw the dime into the end zone to trade, Stephon Diggs, or are you going to see a guy who is, kind of intimidated by the bright lights? And I look back to that game that they played against Baltimore a few weeks ago now, and you know, I think that they were dead in the water at that point. I was fully expecting New England to give that one up, and that ultimately would have sent the Ravens to the playoffs, probably saved John Harbaugh's job too. But they didn't do that. They kept fighting. They gave themselves a chance, and then they got it done. And I think, honestly speaking, nothing better could have happened in that game for New England to be in that spot, to have to try to claw their way back against a team that also needed to win that game and actually get the job done. It was maturity in real time for Drake May, and I think that that's going to serve him well when he comes into situations in the playoffs. And yeah, there's going to be, tough spots for this team, and they are still led by a young leader, but it's not a young leader who hasn't faced adversity this season. He has, and he's actually passed it with flying colors. So I think that they have the ability to certainly be, a true contender here. But again, I have a history of being the kiss of death for teams when I have high confidence in them. So I apologize in advance to all of the Patriots fans out there if I just sealed the deal on that end.
Yeah, let's put this to the test. Let's see it.
All right, so now we've got one more left. It's the Monday night game. Nobody really expected this to be the matchup, but here we are. The 5 seed Houston Texans taking on the 4 seed Pittsburgh Steelers, who are, yes, believe it or not, still with Mike Tomlin as head coach, despite the way that this season has gone.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'm putting all my chips in the middle of the table on this one. Full confidence. 6 points. I had the Texans winning this game. And I think it's going to be a rather easy game for them, just based on the way that their defensive line flies around. I mean, anyone who's seen Will Anderson play football, it kind of reminds you of Miles Garrett in a way. But they also have a ton of depth on that defensive line with Neil Hunter. And then they have, some solid corners as well. Derek Stingley over there. So, watching Aaron Rodgers play this season, I think he's done well for himself, being 42 years old. I think he is, maybe 43. But if you're going to play against the Texans, you're going to be able to need to move in the pocket and use your feet to your advantage. So I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be doing any of that. He's probably going to take a whole lot of hits, and I guess DK Metcalf will be coming back from suspension for this game, but I think the Steelers just used all their juice to beat the Ravens on that final Sunday night game of the year. And, the Texans have also been here before. CJ Stroud has won a playoff game. Nico Collins as well has had a good year, and he's built nice chemistry with CJ across the years. So, I feel pretty confident about this one. I would actually be pretty shocked if the Steelers found a way to win. They'd probably have to force a couple turnovers. And, that Steelers defense, growing up, you would always were so intimidated by them. And you saw Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt over there, even Jalen Ramsey at times. But I just don't see the same juice over there. Cameron Hayward is giving it his all. He is old, and TJ Watt's also dealing with a lung issue, so I just don't think that is going to be a recipe for success for the Steelers to get past this game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everything that you've said, it's hard to argue with. This numbers are there, right? It's right in front of you. There is really not a lot of positive things to say about this Pittsburgh Steelers team outside of the fact that yes, they did make the playoffs. This was a defense that they spent some money on coming into this year. It's not good. This is an offense that is reliant on an Aaron Rodgers that is, obviously aging, and hasn't had his best stuff, hasn't had his best players around him. And so you don't know what you're going to get out of the offense. And like you said, it's a Texans team that has had some juice offensively, and they are prepared for this. It's not like they're coming in having had an exceptionally surprising season like they did a couple of years ago, getting into the playoffs when people didn't think they were going to. So it's setting up very much to be a butt whooping, I would say, from Houston to Pittsburgh. But I'm a little bit worried about the vibes here. I mean, the fact that we're talking about Pittsburgh being in this game to begin with is something that makes me think, okay, they're playing this game in Pittsburgh. What's going to happen? What black cat is going to roam across the field and put a hex on this Texans team that by all means should win by double digits? But I don't have that type of confidence in this game. I've got the Texans as my fourth most confident, so 3 points on this game. I think they should win. I think they're going to win, but I don't know. I mean, I think it was a meme that you shared in a group chat that we both happened to be in a few days ago about that kick last week, and had it gone in, we would be talking about more than likely Mike Tomlin being fired from the Pittsburgh Steelers. But because Loop missed that field goal, here we are talking about the Steelers, and it's prompted me to start wondering whether or not there's something to this run. It doesn't make any sense at all. But again, I feel uneasy about saying that Houston is going to run away with this. But yes, you're right. Everything on paper suggests that the Texans should.
I just think from a physicality standpoint, it's tough to win a game if the other team is physically imposing on you, which I think is what the Texans' defensive line is. Um, and Aaron Rodgers does not have the same legs that he used to, and they're really relying on those tight ends to move the ball down the field. He checks it down a lot to the tight ends and dumps it off to the running backs from time to time, and that's really where their chunk plays come from. How many times have you seen him air the ball out deep downfield to a wide receiver? I mean, it's happened a few times with DK Metcalf, but I just physically and mentally can't visualize them winning this game. But I do kind of know what you're saying with that black cat magic of maybe something could happen.
Right. It would be just par for the course as far as um, Akashur is concerned. But yeah, one thing I've always, or not always, but I've long held as a belief in terms of the NFL playoffs is that because these guys are professionals, it feels like more about what's going to happen in these games. It's just about execution. And so, what we're talking about here with a Houston team that on paper should win this game rather handily, um, you know, the fact that I'm a little bit uneasy about this kind of flies in the face of my belief. If I'm truly holding to that, then I'm picking Houston as my number one or two confidence. But I think that that's an indicator of this year's playoffs as a whole. I don't know how you feel, Thumbnail, about this one, but I had a hard time looking at a lot of these games and saying, yes, I feel particularly good about choosing one or the other of these teams. And it's the first time in a few years I feel like that I've felt that way. And so I think it's going to be a really fun playoffs because I think that there's a lot that could happen, and that's why I'm not even really worrying about going into starting to predict the divisional round games because more than likely we're going to be wrong on at least one of these.
Oh, certainly. And you know what? I don't know if we mentioned it or not, but this is the first year in quite some time that Patrick Mahomes hasn't been in the NFL playoffs as a I guess he's not there at all, but every year that he has been there in the past 5 to 7 years, they've been the favorite. Everyone, knows that the Chiefs are going to be at least in the AFC Championship game. So it is fun to have a few different teams in there, and I think a lot of people think that this is the Bills' window in year to make something happen, but to me, kind of like you said, I think it's wide open. I have no idea who's going to win the Super Bowl. I have our prediction coming up, but I really wouldn't be surprised if 10 different teams won the Super Bowl at the end of the year.
Right. Right. Well, you teased it. Now it's time to let it rip. Let me know what is your Super Bowl matchup, and then let me know who you think is going to win it.
Okay, so I just want to mention my preseason Super Bowl matchup here, just to hold myself accountable, was the Broncos beating the Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers did not make the playoffs, so that is already out the window. So um, that didn't happen, but I'll give a new prediction here. Starting at the beginning of the playoffs, I do have the Broncos in the Super Bowl again. And, I'm going a little chalk here. I'm going to put the Seahawks as well in the Super Bowl, and I actually think that they're going to win. I know a lot of people question Sam Darnold, especially in big spots. He can turn it over in chunks at times, but I think the Seahawks are one of the better coach teams in the league. That defense is kind of like a young Legion of Boom, and they can physically impose their will on you. And that was confirmed to me when they went into Levi Stadium and kind of kicked the what out of the 49ers when the number one seed was on the line. I mean, that game really wasn't in question at any time. I know it was a 10-point game, but when they made the play, they had to do it. And, they really shut down Christian McCaffrey as well. So I'm going with the Seahawks against the Broncos with the Seahawks winning. So what about yourself?
Okay, yeah, no, one versus one. I can't hate on it because at the end of the day, those have been the two best teams all season. So it's not a cop out to assume that those teams could make it. I did go a little bit differently though, and maybe it's wishful thinking. I've been told I do that a lot, but I think because of these playoffs seemingly being so wide open, this is the year to take a swing, a big swing. And so I've got on the NFC side the Rams getting through to the Super Bowl. And the reason partially that I have that is because I don't think that they're going to need to face Seattle until that NFC title game. And that's partially because of how the playoffs work, of course, where the lowest seed that makes it through this weekend is going to go and play Seattle in Seattle. So I don't think that the Rams are going to have to play Darnold in that defense until it literally is an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. And that's where I wonder whether or not Big Game Sam is going to come back and bite them. So I've got McVay and that offense besting the defense there on the Seattle side. And then on the AFC side, I think that, you mentioned with Patrick Mahomes not being in these playoffs, with maybe the Bills window closing if they can't get it done, that you might be experiencing a little bit of a changing of the guard. And I think that the Patriots are definitely going to be in that conversation. However, as our friend Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friend, because I really have been sold on a team that I had very little confidence in earlier in the year. But because they've played so well, because they have a guy that is leading them that was seemingly destined for this type of performance throughout the year, I think that they have the ability to put it together for the long haul, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I've got the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Los Angeles Rams in the Super Bowl. And, you can call me crazy because Liam Cohen came into the year not knowing how to do Jacksonville's chant correctly, and now we're going to put him in the Super Bowl. Go figure. But I really like what this team has done. And, yeah, I think that McVay is one of the smartest minds in the game as well. And because Kyle Shanahan maybe doesn't have it quite there at the personnel level, I'm going to go with the team that has both the coaches and seemingly the offensive
All
firepower.
right, so
In the end,
go ahead. Okay, so I was going to make a quick request here. Since you have the Jaguars in the championship game, let's get your best Duval.
can I do it Cohen style?
Do it Cohen style. Do it K
Duval.
Beck style.
Duval. Although they're going to lose. They're going to lose
Oh
in the
no.
title game. Yep. It's all Rams. It's all Rams once we get to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I've got the Jags making it, but I don't know that they're going to be able to close the deal once they get there.
Fair enough.
But we'll let that Duval ride.
Fair enough. You know what? I need to Google what Duval even means, but I love that chant.
I think it's Duval. Is it Duval County?
Duval County. That's got to be it.
Yeah, it's Jacksonville Metro. So, yep, that's it.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, great. Well, okay. You might think we're done, listeners, but we are not. We've got to open up that mailbag and do that question that's been sitting in the hopper for a couple of weeks. And I need to apologize once again to Brennan because he's always with us, always sending in good questions, and we've made him wait all throughout the holidays. So, Brennan, hopefully this is a late Christmas gift for you to answer this one today, but I'm glad that you asked it, and I think this is probably the right time to answer it anyway. So, Brennan said, as college basketball season is close to being at the forefront, I would argue in the collegiate aspect, it will be in just over a week. Is this the year that the Big Ten ends the 25, now 26 year title drought? So, what do you think, Thumbnail? This is a really good question. I know you're also a Big Ten basketball fan, despite being out on the East Coast now. So, what do you think? There has been some level of success with the Big Ten over the course of those 26 years since they have actually won the entire thing. 8 teams have made it to the title game, but all 8 of those teams, since Michigan State won it in 2000, have lost.
Yeah, no, I think that this is definitely a year that the Big Ten could take a swing and potentially win. Tom Izzo, to me, I think, is going to keep coaching until he wins that next ring. To me, I think that's kind of what he.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's what he's really coaching for at this point in time, to get one more before he retires. But I really like what I've seen out of the Big Ten this year. You and I went to a Grambling State game with a few buddies this year, and Ohio State, although it was a slow start to the game, kind of put together a string of points there, and had us cheering at the end. And so I think hopefully Ohio State makes it in there, but some of the other teams in the Big Ten that probably have a more realistic chance to win it all would certainly be Michigan. I know is in the conversation. I think I saw that Illinois had a fairly decent shot with the Vegas odds as well. So I hope Brennan's Christmas wish comes true and the Big Ten can pull through for him. But we'll see. If anyone's going to do it, I'm going to guess maybe it's Tom Izzo and the Michigan State Spartans.
Okay. Well, you know what though? I need you off the fence a little bit more. Yes or no? Are they going to win the national title this year, the Big Ten?
Well, I hate to say it, Brennan, but I'm bringing Cole. They will not. I think it's either probably, I don't know. I think UConn with Dan Hurley is going to get it done again, if I had to guess. They're actually playing the Providence Friars tonight. No idea what the score is, but hopefully Providence is doing well. But no, I don't think it's going to happen if you need a yes or no definitive answer.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, Brennan, I'm with the thumbnail on this one. I don't know that they're going to be able to get it done this year. It looks good on paper right now. The Big Ten is playing well. They've got 3 teams in the top 10. Michigan's undefeated at number 2. They've got Purdue at number 5. And then they've got Nebraska, oddly enough, coming in at number 10. That's part of my issue with this is that some of the teams that are sitting there right now in the top 25 within the Big Ten, and there are 6 of them, are teams that I don't think are going to be able to truly get to that level where they're actually a true national title contender. I love what Nebraska's done, but we saw them the other night, thumbnail, because they played Ohio State. They don't really have that go-to guy, and that's just one example within the Big Ten. I think Michigan does have a set of really good players, and so they're going to be a serious national title contender. But when you look at the other conferences across the country, there's a lot of talent in other areas too, specifically the Big 12, who's sitting up there with 2 teams in the top 3 with Arizona and Iowa State. I hate to pull from top 25 rankings in early January to help make my case here, but I think you look at those teams that are up there, like Arizona, like Iowa State, like UConn, like Houston, Duke, BYU is very good, obviously, because of the transfer portal. And you start to see some teams that are probably going to have some staying power and also have the experience level from a coaching perspective to get the job done. So I agree. We're going to get into 26 years here with the drought for the Big Ten. But do I think that there's the ability for them to get to the Final Four, maybe even the final, and at least challenge? Yes, I do. I think there's absolutely a shot that the Big Ten does get an opportunity to cut down those nets. But I think we're going to have to wait at least one more year here. And yeah, it pains Big Ten fans, I'm sure, because the talent seemingly has been there. They just have run up against some really good teams when they have gotten to the title game.
Do you have any theories? Quick 20, 30-second theory why that drought has occurred for the Big Ten.
Yeah, for a while, I just think that they didn't play the right style of basketball. I think they were a plotting type conference, similar to the way that the football conference used to be. And really, the first time that I saw that actually change from a team that I expected to do that was when Wisconsin played Duke in 2015. But unfortunately, that Duke team was an excellent, excellent team, and Wisconsin took it down to the wire. So they got about as close as you can get against maybe one of the all-time teams in college basketball and couldn't get it done. But yeah, since that time, I think that there's been quite a bit of athleticism that's been infused into the Big Ten, not just on certain teams, but as a whole. And so I think that they're going to get there within the next 5 years. But I don't know that I would say it's going to be this year just because there is some really good basketball being played in the Big 12. If I had to pick which conference is going to win it this year, it's the Big 12 or Duke individually.
Gotcha. Fair. Yep. I mean that. Who won it last year? It was Florida, the SEC. Okay.
Yep. Florida SEC, but the Big 12 was right there. So I think they're coming back with a vengeance this year, especially with Arizona being as good as they've been. All right. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for the week. Thumbnail, thanks again for lending your analysis for the wild card weekend. We'll go ahead and we'll get a graphic set up so that the listeners on the socials can vote on a poll on which one of us they think is going to do better this weekend. We'll see how that actually ends up. But for all the listeners out there, enjoy the weekend ahead. We've got a lot of great football being played between the college football playoff semifinals over the next couple of days. And then, of course, those games that we highlighted in this episode. So until next time and until the next episode, take it easy, Shuckers.